Hello and welcome to the Copycat Stitch podcast. We're in a different location today for a couple of reasons. We might have different co-hosts if they see fit to join, but we are filming in my dining room, which is dog territory in my house, because my craft room is not just messy, but it's totally inaccessible right now. I've actually been sewing a little bit this week, and as such, I have my portable cutting table out, which means I've got my whole podcast backdrop disassembled, since all that stuff that's on the shelf behind me is actually on top of the folded up cutting table. And also, like, the cutting table takes up basically the whole room. And I'm kind of hoping to get a little more sewing done this weekend, just small projects, and film videos about them, because it's kind of just very straightforward home projects. I did these curtains. There's a cushion here that you can't see, just some small stuff around the house like that. So I decided to film downstairs because I got a bunch of stuff I'd like to talk about, but I was absolutely not getting around to tidying up that room today. So I'm not going to talk about these in today's video. I'm not even going to talk about any acquisitions in today's video, because everything I've acquired, I thrifted, and I think I'm going to do another separate thrift haul video because I've actually accrued some stuff. Not nearly as much like knitting stuff as last time, but I do have a slight stash that's grown, and I do want to talk about a couple of the things in a little more depth. So we're going to separate that off. But to substitute today, I'm not just going to do standard finished objects and whips. I'm also going to do some discussion, I keep looking at the pile, sorry, of projects that I need to cycle out for seasonal reasons. So I have stuff that was hibernating from last summer and some that are holding over from winter that I think I need to put into hibernation. And I just kind of want to show some statuses on that before I put it all away and wrap everything up for the season. So buckle up. I think we've got a bunch of little things to talk about. I'm going to try to touch on some stuff that I keep referencing but never showing. I've got a couple items here that I know I've brought up 100 times, but I've shown maybe like twice. Yeah, okay. So, oh, I am missing finished objects though, because I left them upstairs. Bummer. Let me go grab that. I haven't really been in a cardigan mood. I've got a couple of finished cardigans here, and I've got some in progress ones. And to be honest, I'm thinking about future cardigans. I don't 100% remember if I showed this last time. I think this is my Fungus Cardigan O-neck. This has been blocked now. I think last time it was finished, but not blocked yet. I don't have any footage of me wearing it, and I don't plan to take any because it's a heat wave where I live right now, and this is a mohair blend that is very toasty, but I think I like it a lot. The sleeves are longer than before I blocked it. I was worried that they wouldn't lengthen enough, and they did. And I'm gonna absolutely love having this come fall and winter. But for now, it's gonna go tucked away with my winter clothes because way too toasty for this season. Okay, and then my absolute obsession since last time, I had started it last time, now I've finished it, is the Midland cardigan. Now I kind of had been planning on making the Midland. I had bought the pattern when it first came out, but I had been planning on making it out of different yarn. And I picked up this yarn, as I discussed last time at Joann Fabrics. It ended up being a lot of surprising striping. I thought it was gonna be more speckled. And as I discussed last time, from the skeins on the outside, they mostly looked kind of like this pink speckled section here in the front. It's not a coincidence this ended up here in the front. I did do some finagling with my yarns to try to keep the striping on the body and on the sleeves, but on the main portion of it. And then I reserved some pink sections to use for the cuffs and the hem and the button band and all of that. The striping on the back is more exaggerated. So the fit is really good. I really love it. I will say the only issue I have with it, and I think it's just a tension issue, is right here at the bottom of the button band. By the way, I do love these buttons. They look like animal skin, like reptile skin, but they're not. They're actually wooden carved buttons. They're vintage. They were in my stash and they're just the right color. That like deep mauve just like matches so well. And they had the exact right amount, so I had to do it. So as I was about to say, I think you can see on the bottom here that just the double knit button band, where it attaches to the ribbing, is way too many rows and is like a little wonky. There's too much fabric here, and it's on both of them. I did pick up the exact amount of stitches along the end of the button band that were in the pattern, and I thought it was a rapid rate, but I went with it. And it wasn't until I was 100% done with the button band that I realized that that was probably too many and there's scrunching and excess fabric there. But that's the very beginning of a very long double knit button band that, hey, there we go. That goes all the way up and around the neck and down the other side. I will say, on the whole, this cardigan flew off the needles. I couldn't put it down. It's so potato chippy because there's these different sections of increases and short rows, and then short rows and increases again, and you're going back and forth and doing smaller segments, which made it really addictive because you're always like just that close to the next section. And then you feel like you're nearly done. All you need to do is the button band, and I swear the button band took as long as the rest of the sweater combined. I would still recommend the pattern. I still really love the pattern, but my momentum came to a screeching halt because that double knitting is so tedious. Anyway, I love the fact that it's there. I've actually never done a double knit button band before. I've done double knitting in other contexts, but never as a button band. And I've seen a lot of them like this, and I really love them. The technique in the pattern for the buttonholes did instruct that you break the yarn for every buttonhole. And this is a cotton yarn. The ends are hard to weave in as it is. It doesn't grip to itself, and there were already a lot of excess ends to weave in because I was kind of piecing together the very, very last of the scraps of pink that I had from all of the balls that I used for this. So I think I used 5 different segments of yarn to do the button band, even though I had plenty of continuous yarn to use. Olive just laid down right next to the tripod. I thought she was going to knock the camera. So even though I could have gone all the way around, it would have had odd sections of these other colors. And on this scale, it would have been like giant stripes. And I absolutely didn't want that. I wanted the pink around the edges. So I didn't want to break for the button bands. Now I know there exists methods for doing double knit button bands without breaking the yarn. I've heard of them. I know there's one by Petite Knit that everybody talks about and uses that strategy. I don't know what that strategy is, but because I knew it existed and that it was possible, I kind of just improvised one, and I'm really proud to say that it worked on the first try. So I'm going to share what I did. Again, I've never made a Petite Knit pattern. I don't even know what pattern she had that written into, so I'm not disseminating that if it happens to be the same technique, but I'm going to tell you what technique that I did use to do this because I found it really useful. So when you get to the point where you're supposed to break the yarn, you know, you're double knitting across the entire button band, and then you stop and you're just supposed to knit across the outside or the inside and then break the yarn and go back and connect on the other side and work up both sides of the buttonhole separately. When I got to that point, instead of cutting the yarn, I did a double yarn over. I wrapped the yarn around my working needle twice, and I did twice because it just so happens that these buttonholes are 2 repeats tall, so that when I came back on the next pass, I knit together that first yarn over with the last stitch of the row, and then I did another repeat, and at the end of the second repeat, I knit together that second last yarn over, and then I'm at the top of the second half with no break, but the double yarn over makes the right height buttonhole. I hope that that makes any sense at all. I did it in the moment just because it made sense to my knitting brain and it happened to work out, but I found it very useful. So I've never made a tutorial video before, but I guess if you're interested, if I get enough demand, I could do a tutorial for that, maybe a short. But yeah, I love that. I've worn it a couple times. It's very comfy. It's a lot warmer than I expected, being 100% cotton. It's because it's worsted weight cotton, and that garter stitch, I think, holds on to a lot of air. It makes it really toasty. So it's another one, even though I think I will get some use out of it in the summer, not for a little while, because like I said, it's very hot here. Okay, my last finished object, I actually just bound off last night. This is my Olivine top. It's quite small, hasn't been blocked yet. This is a mesh stitch. I think it will block out a lot. And it's made out of this very fluffy cotton yarn. I'm kind of disappointed to say, I only used half the yarn I bought. I'm only disappointed because I bought the yarn for this project and I almost always knit entirely from stash. And these are $17 a ball, and I bought 3 of them. And I still have, oops, there's some needles stuck in here. I still have partials of the other 2 balls. So like this is about 25 grams, I think, and then a full ball. So I don't know what I will make with the other half. I think this butter yellow fluffy cotton yarn would make pretty hair accessories. I have the cottage hair accessories pattern from Wool and Pine Designs. Maybe I'll do some of those. That would be fun. That still won't use all of that up though. Anyway. I have made this top before. Last time I made it, I made the decision to seam up the sides because as the pattern is written, this is the side. It is only joined at the button band when you join in the round, and the sides are just wide open. I said I want to try this time. I think that was the back actually. I said this time I want to try and do it as written and see if I like it, and if I don't, I'll just seam up the sides. So like I said, I just bound off last night. And I don't know if I like it yet because I haven't really tried it on, but it seems to fit similarly to the other one. I do want to block it before I make that decision, so I'm not able to do that right away. But I love, it's like very cropped, but very oversized bust-wise. Like in width, it's very oversized. And I don't know. It seems like the most impractical top in the world, I swear, but I wear the other one quite a bit for what it is. And it's so lightweight. Like I just discussed how much yarn I used. It's literally like 75 or 80 grams of yarn in this. It's very, very light. I need to be better about weighing my projects when I'm done to mark on Ravelry exactly how much yarn I've used. That was one of my general knit year's resolutions that I don't think I've wholly kept up with. I'll put this back in here with its other pieces just in case I decide to make changes. Okay, and then I have one more active project that I've been very enthusiastic about. It's a little ironic, but I was in the middle of making that Olivine top. I was kind of bored with the process, which is wild because it's such a small garment. It doesn't take much at all, but it's made in that chainette cotton yarn, and it's got that super open mesh pattern on it. And after I finished the front and back panels and seamed the shoulders together, I didn't feel like doing the neck ribbing or the arm ribbing, and I felt like casting on something new. And I had seen online on a podcast, someone discussed I think it's Corran Cardigan, Corran, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Corran Cardigan, and I had gotten in my head that I found this yarn at a thrift store last year. So if you remember last year at Goodwill, I found a bag of this Mako cotton in this super bright cobalt blue color, and it had 7 balls of it in a single bag, and there was also another skein of some other yarn shoved in there as well. So it was $5.28 for 8 skeins of yarn, and 7 of them were these. This is not a color I would normally go for. I don't normally go for such brights, but after I looked at that Corran Cardigan specs on Ravelry and I realized that this was the right weight and I had enough yardage to make it, and it just kind of, got in my head and I wanted to do it. So extremely ironically, I got bored with that chainette cotton open weave lace stitch pattern top that I was making. So in order to, cure that boredom, I cast on a chainette cotton open weave lace stitch cardigan. That makes no sense whatsoever. But you know what? I really enjoyed working on it. And I guess it's a different lace stitch, I should say. It's simpler in my opinion, and it has a very similar effect. For this one, it's made entirely with like knit two together, yarn over kind of thing. And they just alternate where those are placed. On the other one, it's a, I don't know what the stitch is called for the Olivine top. It's, how do I want to say it? I think it's a 3-stitch repeat technically. You do a yarn over, you slip a stitch knitwise, knit two, and then you pass the slipped stitch over the other two. So like that stitch kind of wraps around them. So it does give a slightly different visual texture, but it's honestly really similar, and this one's way simpler to do. It's very disruptive to the flow of knitting to have to keep stopping every 3 or 4 stitch. I say 3 or 4 because in my head, like the yarn over is a stitch, but there's also a decrease, so it's not a stitch. Whatever, every 3 to 4 stitches, you have to stop and pass that stitch over, and that's really disruptive to the flow for me. And this didn't have that sort of disruption because it's just yarn overs and decreases. Yeah, so this one is a bottom up construction, and then you know, at a point, stop under the sleeves, work the front side panels and the back panel separately. And then I have so far done the button band. I had actually completely done this button band the other day, and then when I took it out today to move on to the next step, I realized I had made a mistake, and I had to rip back just half the button band and change where the buttonholes were placed. So I'm, I think, 2 rows away from binding this off again. And then next, I will be working the ribbing around the neck. There's actually choices to this pattern. There's like a V-neck version and a round neck. And I didn't realize that when I bought it. I saw the picture and I loved the picture and I just went with that. And I got halfway through the pattern because you start bottom up. You don't really have to do anything different between the 2 neck lines until you get really near the top. So when I got to that step really near the top, it was like the pattern diverged, and I thought, oh, I didn't realize there was an option. So I had to go back and look at the picture to make sure I was making the one I liked, because I didn't know there was 2 options. And it turns out the picture that I loved was the round neck version. So once I finish this button band again and bind it off, I'll pick up and do the ribbing on top of the round neck here, and then I'll do the sleeves. I don't really feel like doing the sleeves. I've kind of been putting it off. But it occurred to me today that I think I might be able to, at some point on the sleeves, use those flexi flips that I'm all excited to try out. So maybe that'll motivate me to get a move on this. Yeah. Speaking of, this is one of the Addi interchangeable needles from that set, from the thrift video. And I guess I could talk a little bit about this set. I like it well enough. I don't prefer metal needles on the whole. As metal needles go, these are decent. I much prefer the texture of knitting with chow-goos. These are a little clinky and they're hollow, and there's something about it, I don't know. It's just a sensory thing for me. It's not bad. I have been using them for this project. I used 2 different sizes. Now that I'm on the ribbing, I'm on the smaller size, but for the rest of it, I used a different one. The set I got is the Click Needles, which means there's no like key to fasten the tips to the cord. They kind of have a little spring in them and you have to turn them. And while I haven't had any issues with like this size or any of the larger sizes, I did first use the smallest size in the set, which I believe is a 3.5 millimeter. And when I finished that project and needed to disassemble the needles to put them back in the case, it was really hard. And I was absolutely struggling. I couldn't get either needle to budge. My husband couldn't get either needle to budge. And eventually, with one of those like silicone grippy things to open a jar, I did manage to get them off, but it was a lot more force than I think should be necessary. And like, frankly, I don't have any medical conditions that impact my grip strength, but a lot of people do. And that I think would make these really inaccessible. If you do have an issue with grip strength for any reason, I wouldn't recommend these Click needles because they absolutely are very difficult with those smaller sizes to get them on and off. So, but like no harm done. Like I said, I got them for $1, right? And they're working well enough for this. Even if they're not my favorite needles of all time, I'm still very pleased I have them and I have the option to use them. So the rest of what I have to talk about is all projects that have been on the needles for a long time. Some of them are winter ones and I want to just do a status check before I put them away for the summer. And there's at least one that's a summer one that I'm pulling out and hopefully going to work on again. So, status check. This is the sweater I was making my husband for his birthday. I guess I'm still making it for him, but it's not for his birthday anymore. His birthday is March 31st. I had mentioned before, I was very gung-ho. I was working on it all through February. I got really far. I was definitely going to finish in time. I had a whole month, and it was right at the beginning of March that he suffered a severe injury, and he absolutely wasn't going to be able to wear it even if I did finish it by his birthday. And I kind of just had some sour feelings associated with the project because I had been working on it when I got the call that he was injured. And basically just the fact that every time I saw it immediately after he was injured, it just made me sad to realize that he wouldn't be able to wear it and that his life was so impacted by the injury. So he's quite mended. He's not back to 100%, but I'd say he's at 90% and he's doing great. And it's part of the reason why our house is kind of in a state of flux, because we had to have a lot of the furniture moved around for the last 3 months to make the house more accessible. And now that he's got his capacity to ambulate back, we're putting the furniture back. And because I'm me, I'm like redecorating every room that was impacted basically, because if I moved it, I have an opportunity to do what I want with it. So anyway, here's where it is. It's mostly done. The sleeves are 100% done. This is how the pattern has you do it, which I thought was interesting. This sweater also smells so woolly. It's fisherman's wool, but I tried to work on this morning. I did like 2 rounds on it this morning, and it was kind of making me sad because the woolly smell is making me think of fall and Rhinebeck. And I was like, this is like seasonally inappropriate. It's giving me fall vibes because of the woolly smell, and I don't think I can do it. So I'm gonna set it aside until closer to fall. But anyway, I'm mostly through it. Obviously, I got quite a ways to go on the body, but that's all I have to do left is the body. Men's sweaters tend to run longer in the body, and he's a tall guy, so I would probably have him try it on just to double check before I do the ribbing at the bottom to make sure it's a length that he's comfortable with. I've talked about this many times before in a lot more detail about the cables. I'm really enjoying it. This last winter was the year of cables for me, and I love them, and I think I will continue to love cables, but for the summertime, I'm not going to be working on this heavy wool Aran sweater. So I tried, I did my due diligence and I tried this morning, and I've decided that it needs to pop away for the summer. So that one's going to go into hibernation. And I have another one that's going to go into hibernation that I also worked on this morning. And that is the Calm Down Cardigan by Lily Kate France. I always forget what the pattern's called every single time, but I remember today. It's the Calm Down Cardigan. So it looks like nothing. Every time I show it on here, I'm very well aware that I'm holding up a wibbly black blob, and you absolutely cannot see what's going on. There are a lot of very nice details to this pattern. There's a lot of great, thoughtful design details with like ribbing down the side that you can't see. There's a whole panel of ribbing down the side. There's a lot of great shaping on the front, and there's this cool shaping at the bottom of the button band to give it a little gap at the bottom that I think looks so nice, and saddle shoulders, and none of that's visible. I think in person, if you can see through the massive amount of pet hair that's on it, which I will lint roll off before wearing it, you can see those details, and it will be worth it. And I will get tons of wear out of this once it's finished. But I have found, this isn't the first winter I worked on this. I actually cast this on the year before. And I have found that I am utterly unmotivated to work on an all black garment. This is so uninspiring to me. It's so boring. I want it. I want it to have the basics in my wardrobe. I want it because it's going to be cute. But it's so tedious. I swear I did maybe a quarter of what's here this past winter, and like 75% of the body was done the year before. I've really done very little on it. I did bind off. This morning, I kind of forced myself to bind off, and I mean forced. It was tedious to do a sewn bind off on so many stitches, and I didn't want to, but I kept telling myself, I'm never ever gonna pick this project up again if I put this in storage on the last row before the bind off. And to be honest, I don't even know if it was the last row before the bind off. I'm just so burnt out on this. I was like, if I don't bind this off, I'm never gonna move forward with it. So you know what? This is as long as the ribbing is. I just have to make an executive decision, because by the time I reread the pattern and figure out where I am and try to read my work on this black yarn, and I won't care anymore. It's gonna be fine. I'm just gonna bind it off and it's gonna be fine. And that's the length that the cardigan is. And I tried on this shell today after I bound it off, and it's a great length and there's no problems with it. So that's what I decided to do, was push myself to struggle through the sewn bind off without the patience to do the 2 setup rows to make it a tubular bind off. It was just a sewn bind off, just to get through it, just to have it in a better, more accessible state for when I take it out next winter, because I do think I can finish it next winter. And it's just going to be on Sleeve Island now. It's officially on Sleeve Island now. Now that I've done that bind off, we're at a point where it's just sleeves, and hopefully I can get there. But oh, it's such a pain. So unmotivating. All right, let's talk about my Sweet Shop blanket a little bit, because this was my Christmas cast on at the end of 2023. This is using partially an Advent yarn and partially some stash yarn from Yarnaceous Fibers. Both I did the Advent in 2023, and then I had a bunch of stash yarn from them. It's absolutely not gonna show here. I love it. I'm kind of questioning now if it's gonna fit in my home. I really don't have any purple in my house. I don't know why. I don't know. A lot of the colors do work. The pink and the blues and the mustard, like absolutely that's all in my house. But this blanket ended up being like half purples. Oh well. I love it. It's a joy to work with. Every time I work on it, I love the Yarnaceous Fibers yarn. It just knits so smoothly, and it's one of my favorites to work with. The Advent calendar was DK weight yarns, and then these more variegated ones were fingering weight sock yarns that I had in stash that I held double for this. So on the whole, I think they go pretty well together. I like it. I'm definitely more than halfway through. This is worked in a diagonal. So on this side, I'm on this square. I don't know how many I have left. I have a chart in my phone. I really don't work on it very often. Every so often I'll take it out and work on 1 or 2 squares and then not touch it for weeks. I do tend to work on it more in the cold weather, but it's something that I really love working on, but then I forget how much I love working on it and just set it aside for really long periods of time. So maybe that's something I need to be more conscious of picking up. I have 2 projects here that are from summers past that I'm pulling out to try to resurrect. One of them is my baseball bomber. I've been talking about it for years. My original gimmick was that I only worked on this at ball games. I've worked on it at many ball games. I cast it on, did a lot of the finishing work to my detriment at ball games. I've also talked about in the past how this was a terrible yarn project choice. It was a terrible project to work on at a ball game. It takes way too much attention. It's extremely involved, and but I'm really quite committed now. It's a fingering weight cotton from Hobie, and you can see it's all scrunchy and stretchy. I do think if I ever finish this project, I'm planning on sewing a lining for this, at very least for the body portion, just to try to give it some structure, because I'm afraid it will stretch and get worse over time because it's cotton that I chose for some reason. But this one's on Sleeve Island, and there's even more steps to be done after Sleeve Island because, as you can see, there's these big holes in the front where you add pockets. And yeah, there's a lot more to be done with this. It turned out to be an extremely involved project, and I've done Boys and Girls projects before, so I don't know what part of me just didn't register that they're always very detailed and involved, and that's not a great choice for a ball game project. But I haven't brought it to a ball game this year. I have gone to a couple games and I brought a different project both times, mostly because I hadn't worked on that one since last year and I was not in the headspace to like reread the pattern and read my work and try to figure out where I was. But I will do that before I go to a game someday, and then I'm ready to kind of get back into the rhythm of it. My other project is also years old, and it breaks my heart because I was so excited when I found this pattern, and it's just so involved that I never work on it. Now, this is my Fossil Frenzy tee. You're a real one if you remember this, because honestly, it's been a couple years. It's a kit from Yarnaceous Fibers. Like I said, I love working with their yarn. This feels so nice. I wish I could wear this right now. It's an extremely detailed color work dinosaurs. I'll just put a picture on because this is not going to help you. It's a Mary P. Hunt pattern, and it's an extremely detailed color work chart of all these dinosaur fossils that looks really cool when it's done, right? Well, this whole chart is the full width of your body. You do 2 repeats, one for the front and one for the back, and it just takes so much attention. I'm really not very far into the color work. If I look here, maybe 7 or 8 rows. Oh no, actually on the back, if I look at the floats, it's probably more like 10 or 12. But it's a lot of attention, that's all. And I'm almost never in the mood to pay this much attention. If I could just buckle down and get through, I don't know why I've done one sleeve in full, even the ribbing, and then the other sleeve I didn't do it all. Probably I got tired of the color work and I took a break and did a sleeve. I'm not sure. Probably if I force myself to buckle down and actually get through this color work, I could get to the, the stockinette part of it, and that I would love and enjoy, and then it would be smooth sailing from there. This would be an easy, mindless project that I can work on, at the office and whatnot. And then on top of that, it is hand-dyed yarn, so there's alternating to be done, and it's a lot of attention. So this has been festering for a long time, even though it's something that I love and I love the idea of. It's just a very time-consuming, attention-consuming project that I really haven't forced myself to do. So I don't have that many projects in progress for me. Technically, I think I've got like 7 or 8, even counting the hibernating ones, which is truly very low. I tend to have like 10 going at once. And for some reason, I don't have cast-on-itis today. I often do. Historically, I'm ready to cast on any day at the drop of a hat, and just lately I haven't felt that way, which is why I think I've had the time and brain space to like reassess these projects and get through a couple of those winter ones and get them to a state to put away for the summer and look at my old summer projects again. So I'm glad that I had the headspace to do that today, but I think it's odd because, normally I would just cast something on and avoid the whole thing. So anyway, thanks for joining today. And thanks if you're one of the many new faces that are around here after that thrift video. I'm glad to see that reached so many people. I'm thinking about doing it sort of as a series because in the summer I really do a lot of garage sailing and thrifting. And like I said, I've already accrued enough of a little stash that I think I could do another small video. So maybe I'll just kind of make it a series to do sort of like monthly secondhand, like thrift haul crafting updates. Let me know if you're interested in that, I guess. So thanks to everybody, whether you're new or old, I'm so glad you're here, and thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. And if you are new here, you might not know that we call this the end of the video club. If you actually stuck around, even when I started winding down the video and are still watching now, then thank you. You are in the club just by virtue of being here. And we have this fun practice where we share projects. So these are all the projects and comments from people that watched the last podcast. So if you want to participate, you can send me a message on Instagram or to my email, which are in the box below. And let me know what you're working on while you watch this video or just in general. And of course, if there's fur babies in the picture, that won't be a problem as ever. So I always appreciate seeing everybody's projects, and occasionally when their cats sneak in there, that's fun too. So thanks everybody for sticking around to the end of Video Club. I'm so glad that we're here and that we're checking in and that it's finally summer. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Bye.